Hi all, I thought it would be interesting to check out another Judit Polgar game, this one surrounded in controversy, played in the Linares GM tournament of 1994. According to Wiki, at Linares 1994, Judit Polgar suffered a controversial defeat at the hands of the then world champion Garry Kasparov. The tournament marked the first time the 17-year-old Judit Polgar was invited to compete with the world's strongest players. After 4 games she had 2 points, which was a fair result considering she was rated third from last in the very strong event. Matched with Kasparov in the 5th round, the world champion changed his mind after making a move and then made another move instead. According to the chess rules, once the player has released the piece, he cannot make a different move. So Kasparov should have been required to play his original move. Polgar said she did not challenge this, explaining afterwards, "I was playing the world champion and I didn't want to cause unpleasantness during my first invitation to such an important event. I was also afraid that if my complaint was overruled, I'll be penalised on the clock when we were in time pressure." She was unaware at the time that the remove was caught on tape by a television crew. The videotape showed Kasparov's fingers were free of the knight for 6 frames, so it's a knight move we're talking about, and I'll show you that later in this game. I'll point out the exact move. But Kasparov had released the piece for a quarter of a second, apparently. The tournament director was criticised for not forfeiting Kasparov when the videotape evidence was made available to him. At one point, Judit reportedly confronted Kasparov in the hotel bar, asking, "How could you do this to me?" Kasparov told reporters that his conscience was clear and he was not aware of his hand leaving the piece. Although Polgar recovered by the end of the tournament, she went into a slump over the next 6 rounds, gaining only half a point. In Chess Dummies, James Ade commented on the game, writing, "If even world champions break the rules, what hope do the rest of us have?" So let's have a look at this fascinating controversial game, and it was quite exciting actually. In the Sicilian defence, quite a fighting game from both sides. The open Sicilian, and the Sicilian defence, one of Kasparov's favourite weapons with black. Knight off A6, F4, now E6. Okay, so that's Scheveningen set up in the centre. Bishop E2, Bishop E7. And after castles, Queen C7 puts the brakes on a bit against E5. Queen is very usefully placed usually on C7. It can support later a knight maybe coming to C4 as well. Okay, so Queen E1, and black doesn't castle just yet. Knight BD7. Okay, Judit plays A4. Now Kasparov plays B6. Okay, he can't play B5, but he can still exert pressure on E4 by putting his bishop on B7, fianchetting it there. So bishop B7, and now king H1, useful prophylaxis move. I assume this is all like theory anyway. Rook D8 seems very, very familiar from a recent Natalia Pogonina game which we checked out. So here, bishop E3. Okay, bishop E3. I think Natalia might have played F5 and knight E6 at some point. Maybe it was slightly different. So bishop E3, what's the state of play here? Black, Kasparov thought it was safe to castle here actually. After bishop E3 he just castled. And Queen G3, okay, there might be some threats on the horizon like this, crude threats to just drive the knight back and then sort of take it from there usually. So knight C5 and F5 is played, so it's releasing that bishop for action on H6. Okay, E4's under fire of course here, but I think it's probably too dangerous to do anything to try and take that pawn on E4 here. It looks like F6 would be a very blasting move using the pin on G pawn. F6 will be just winning a piece at the end of it, I would expect. So actually Kasparov chose E5, and we have bishop H6. So the knight hasn't got any option. It can't go to H5 because the bishop's on that, so it has to retreat here unless black wants to lose the exchange with G6. So knight E8. Okay, now knight B3. So E4 is adequately defended, and there seems to be a little bit of a bind on D5. So how does Kasparov generate counterplay in this sort of position? Knight d7, knight retreat. Okay, after rook ad1. Now king h8, okay, in effect kicking the bishop because it's now not pinned. So it goes back to e3, eyeing b6. Now knight e f6. So what's going on here? Again, pressure on these two squares, central squares. Queen f2, eyeing b6, maybe tying down like the d7 knight. Rook fe8. So it's pretty. I mean, black's position looks pretty with the rooks like ready for action. This knight, you know, and queen seem tied into defending b6 at the moment. There's a d5 bind being created by these guys. So it looks like a fairly standard sort of position. Rook fe1. Okay, so white returns the compliment. Nice rooks from both sides, eyeing the centre. Both players really respecting the centre here. Bishop f8. As though maybe on the cards there could be a breakout at some point with d5. That rook might be useful for such a breakout move. Bishop g5. And now h6. So again, a lot of toying around in this game. And now the bishop goes to h4. And now a little bit of pressure on the c file, rook c8. But where is this leading? At the moment it would seem, how is this knight going to be dislodged? Okay, so queen f1. I think that ties down black for b5, you know, to be able to just play queen takes b5 to make sure the knight is not committed to guarding b5 there, otherwise queen c2 crashing down the c file. So queen f1 maybe holding up b5. So is white slightly on the passive side? Bishop e7. And now knight d2. Knight d2. Okay. This has a weakness of the last move actually. It was from b3, it was eyeing c5, and Kasparov pounces on that actually, queen c5, which is potentially quite annoying because queen b4 and then the b pawn is being hit. So I don't know, maybe the knight should have remained on b3. Now the knight goes back to b3, and then Kasparov takes a slight risk maybe with his queen, but how is the queen going to be trapped? So it does go into the b4 square. So this is a square via a manoeuvre that didn't need to be permitted, really. But on the other hand, okay, bishop e2 now. So a little bit of pressure on a6. But on the other hand here, now that the queen's on b4, the centre is being hit. And another weakness of this last move is e4. So does white really want to lose the e4 pawn in exchange for a measly a6 pawn? So bishop takes e4. Kasparov wins that central pawn. After knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes. Is white's idea to win a6? I mean, a4 is going to be under fire. c2 is now under fire after these exchanges. So what's going on here? It's like black's activity has increased here. Bishop f3, and now the centre knight is supported. No, it's not supported. It could have been supported, pardon me. The knight retreats. The knight retreats. So now d5 and e4, you know, we've got these pawns which are ready to run in the centre. Okay, a6 is taken now. Rook e8, and now queen retreats back to the centre, but we have mobility here, potential. King g8, and I think both players are getting into a time pressure situation. Bishop b7. Is it a bit of nitpicking here, attacking the rook like that? Queen d2, wanting a queen exchange, but no, queen just takes on a4. So Kasparov here looks to be doing quite well. He's now technically a pawn up, and he's got central mobile pawns, but actually d6 is of course loose here, and that's taken. Queen d6. But the rook is coming to the 7th rank. Rook takes c2, and this is quite a menace. This queen has also got scope to come to the king side, which we'll see is important, and a few variations which I would like to discuss now very soon here. Now knight d2, and I think this is definitely a time pressure situation, and it's here that apparently there's some video evidence that Kasparov might be considering knight c5, and in fact I thought I saw a YouTube video I'll try and put a link if I can find that YouTube video where knight c5, and apparently a quarter of a second the hand was off, apparently, and then Kasparov actually chose knight f8. But this move is not a disaster actually. Checking with Houdini, even if knight c5 was played, well actually after the game apparently Kasparov said he was not afraid of bishop c6 and rattled off something else to indicate black was okay somehow. But let's have a check though with Houdini, because I think black is okay after bishop c6, which seems to be very, very dangerous, forking these two guys. But actually queen h4 I think is the key move. So we're on h2, there's no defensive knight at the moment, the rook's quite dangerous on the 7th, and these knights, you know, are quite dangerous really. They've got a lot of possibilities to help coordinate an attack in the variations against the white king here. So say, let's examine bishop takes e8, knight g4 threatening mate in 1 on h2, h3, and this secures a draw for black, this knight and queen, for example like this. After check, now if here king g1, then this just is a draw for perpetual. But actually you might ask, which would be an interesting question to ask, why not the move g3, which is not something I should have prepared this earlier. Let's add a kibitzer for g3. I think it might have to do with queen f5. Queen f5 is on h3. Okay, so why black, well that would be mate in 1. Sorry, rook takes e5, check. Apparently black's better here. It's a bit messy. Okay, so we have a position where black is slightly better here, even though the exchange down it's enough, it's 2 pawns for the exchange. So in that variation black was fine after queen h4 apparently. Now if g3, we have a different variation where black has the luxury of taking out on e8 to hit the queen on d6, and then suck the queen on e8, because knight d3 comes to the rescue to black here, and apparently this is dead equal according to my Houdini. For example, rook f1, check, and now actually that's quite good, that check, because we're on d1 here. Check, rook takes d2, and black has secured a draw. So, you know, Kasparov apparently is correct. It's not actually, you know, a completely losing move to play knight c5, because he's always got a lot of possibilities here. It seems his queen, you know, got super active after that knight d2. You know, when queen c5 to b4 was allowed. The queen's quite good on this 5th rank if you can get to the white king, white h4. So here knight f8 was the better move, but actually there's an even stronger move technically. Just rook takes b2, inviting positively like bishop c6, because there's a saving move here, queen b4, hitting the queen, and black would be better here slightly. Okay, so in the game actually, instead of knight c5, the move knight f8 was played. Okay, black's got an active position. It's really a mess though, isn't it? But there's an active rook on the 7th. White's king safety looks a bit suspect, but there's a bishop, you know, on the diagonal, so it's not all bad. 2, 3, 4 against 2, 3, 4, 5. Black's a pawn up and plays white plays knight e4. Kasparov actually is not afraid to retract his move here. Sorry, it was a sort of thematic for the game. Knight d7, knight goes back to d7 from f8, supporting the other knight, which means now actually that knight takes e4 and knight f6 will get both knights energized back. Well, one knight left but energized, but it's energized anyway. And black now, so he's improved that position. Queen takes b6, and on knight g4, Kasparov's going for the king, eyeing these two key squares, and he's got other possibilities here like queen f4 to coordinate with that knight. So the queen and knight coordination in this game is amazing. But now black has got this pawn though, which is quite mobile, e4, so there's a horrible menacing threat of coming to fork both rooks. Bishop d5. So is there a punishment lying in waiting here for e3? Well, e3 is played, and now the queen is attacked, as well as the rook. So is this quite a nasty fork? Did Kasparov blunder here? Well, he just casually just plays queen e4. So he's maintaining quite a few threats here. The exchange down after bishop c2, queen takes c2. There's still this principal threat now of e2. Okay, and it's probably difficult to parry. Technically, let's just get an engine perspective if there are any resources here for white. Apparently rook d8 is one of the strongest moves, but rook a1 is also... It seems everything's better for black here by about one pawn. But rook d8 was a fair try, apparently. Kasparov took, best move, just to leave a pure exchange down, but this pawn's so dangerous. Now the move queen e7 was played here. Apparently technically that was queen d4 slightly. And now the crushing move, queen c4, forces white's resignation, even though white's the exchange up. So the dynamism here is just too much. What's going on here dynamically? Let's just check one variation. Say rook b1, queen f4, threatening mate, king g1. That's pretty nasty to have to play that. Check, and then e2 is crashing through. It's threatening queen f1. White would have to sack the queen here. And in this situation, there was no g3 because this is just a mating sequence. So very, very dynamic play there, inviting actually that bishop b3. And when this pawn's crashing down, and there's combined threats against the white king as well as the pawn being a total menace. So bishop b3 was actually not very effectual here at all in this position, with this horrible threat still of e2. So a very dynamic game from Garry Kasparov, but just one with an interesting controversy around it. Let's have a look at it again. So a very fighting Sicilian defense with the early f4. So similar in many respects in the start sequence, I think, if not identical to the Polgar game we recently saw. Okay, so queen g3. It looks like standard stuff so far, but Kasparov has it under control here. It seems he pounced on one slightly timid move, one slightly timid knight retreat, and he pounced when the move knight d2 was played. Otherwise, I'm not really sure. I thought b5 was held up. So what would black be doing here? If we just check this position where I believe the blunder of allowing this pressure on e4 in effect, because the queen coming to b4 adds pressure on b4. So technically here, white is slightly better. Just bishop f2 keeps things okay. Waiting move, just king g1. What would black be doing? It's hard to see what black would be doing if white just shuffled king, actually, because white's got control here. If white even just shuffled the king, I don't know how black would make progress. And in fact, with this move, actually, an engine move suggested, it covers c5. So actually, the move knight d2 might actually be possible here, a lot more possible. But where would the knight be going? I'm not really sure. Maybe white should just be content to sit on the position. Apparently, b5 is on the cards here now, with a slight advantage to black, believe it or not, even if white does nothing. That's not good. So the knight, I think, I don't know, position with this b5 stuff. Very interesting that knight d2 was prompted. So f5 is a serious threat. Bishop f2, but b5 here. Why wouldn't b5 here be any good? Oh, because the queen takes b5. If the queen must be left on b5. It's difficult to hold black, basically. I just wanted to show that point, that maybe it's difficult or not, you know. So knight d2 allows this queen c5, and from here it seems black's getting a lot of pressure. So it culminates basically in the loss of the e-pawn and extra mobility of these two guys, but this will be the only survivor, but it comes through with great effect later. So after winning that central e-pawn, losing d6 pretty soon, but the e-pawn is still coming through now. And Kasparov even sacking exchange that emphasises e-pawn, combined with the threats against the white king here, inviting bishop b3 for queen e4. And this seems to be dire now for white in this position. Great dynamism, the pawn on the 6th rank and a central pawn on the 6th rank as well. And a nasty knight and queen combination. The pieces work well in this position, so getting rid of a pair of rooks doesn't help white, it seems here. So this is quite a crunching move, this queen c4. So not only attacking the rook but also creating other possibilities like queen f4. After rook b1, queen f4, and this would be winning. So basically after queen c4, white resigned. I hope you enjoyed that. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks so much.